Okay. We're live.
Is this okay here?
Yeah, that should be a good spot.
There, okay.
Yeah. Took a little while to set up, but we're rolling now. And
Yes.
so welcome back to another podcast. Today I'm with two very special guests. I'm with Ronald Lewis and Margaret Lewis, or as I usually say, Nanny and Granddad. So thank you for joining me on the podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. It's our pleasure.
Yes.
Yeah, so the main thing I think we'll go over today is the Granddad Stories, the binder that you had worked on.
Okay.
So if there's any family members listening to this, they'll probably be familiar with those Granddad Stories.
Yeah.
They've read them and maybe they could probably use a refresher. But
I was just thinking, should I get that book, do you think, Oliver?
I think we'll be okay.
We're live, Ron.
Yeah,
Well,
we'll just
we're
go.
live.
We'll just go without the book. And,
Okay.
and I remember some of the things from the book, and
I do
I'll ask
too.
you about a few of those. Yeah. So, but yeah, just to give people a little bit of context, because there will be people listening to this that aren't familiar with those Granddad Stories.
Sure.
I'll give a little summary, and Granddad, you let me know if it's accurate or if I'm missing a few things.
Yeah.
But essentially, Granddad has always been a pretty compassionate and kind person, and trying to share his life stories and hopefully be able to give some life lessons and advice to the younger generation. I always remember you at Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, talking to the children or calling them over and asking us some questions, some tricky questions sometimes. And you're always trying to teach us some life lessons, and this binder, which is the Granddad Stories, seems like a neat package full of life lessons and stories that you've had. Is that fair to say? And
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
what were your intentions behind that binder?
Well, the stories are rather extensive, and it's a question of sharing them with the grandkids, you know?
Right. Yeah. You want to pass down the experiences and knowledge that you've collected and give them some of it to the younger generation.
Right.
Yeah, it's a really great idea, I think. And a lot of the Granddad Stories have had a religious tone. So I wanted to talk to you both about religion and get your take on that. Because I know these days going to church, praying, any of the religious practices, they're a lot less common than they once were. Why do you think that is? And what do you think people are missing out on because they're not praying, they're not going to church, and they're not doing these things?
Okay.
Well, our faith has always been very important to us, and growing up, it was the same in my family, and I think in Ron's family too.
Mm-hmm.
There were occasions when we didn't know where to turn next.
Right.
We were in business for 35 years, and occasions would come up where we were without an answer, really, and somehow we prayed, and the answer came to us at maybe sooner, maybe later, but we did find an answer. So that's my answer, Ron.
Yes, well, I think that Mary, the mother of Christ, there outlined 15 promises that she would help people. If they were in trouble or whatever it happens to be. Mm-hmm. And so we found her to be a good one to pray to because she has the 15 promises all lined up there.
Right.
So.
And yeah, I could see the prayer being a very powerful thing, especially when you're going through like a challenging time. I personally am not actually very religious, but I see the value, and I in some of the religious aspects, and through reading through your Granddad Stories, I can see obviously religion's been a very powerful thing for you in your life, and I think it can be a bit of a shame sometimes. People are quick to dismiss religion when you see how much of a powerful impact it can have on certain people. What is it about religion do you think that scares some people away? Like some people, or they have a tough time committing, or they're quick to dismiss it. What do you think is happening there?
Well, I think religion is challenging, thou shalt not, about this, that, and the other
A lot of rules, yeah.
A lot of rules. And people like to have the freedom, and they don't like challenges and so on. But I think Jesus and Mary not only have challenges, but they raise questions, and they provide answers too, in the sense that they will talk to you,
Right.
and or make suggestions and so on.
Right. And you talked a lot about signal graces in the stories. Do you mind? Could you explain to people what that is, and maybe give an example of a signal grace?
I think one of the most obvious one is when Margaret and I had a signal grace when I first met Margaret. It was
Right.
love at first sight.
Yeah.
I had never seen her before, and anyways, they were putting on this variety show in the CYO, which is the youth organization. And although I'd passed through it, I was about 24 at the time, and Margaret was about 19.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at one point I thought maybe she was 14. So
Oh, yeah.
I did want to ask her out, but I
You had the
hesitated
Yeah.
in getting there. But anyways, that was a signal grace that I had when I first met Margaret. And I also had a guarantee, because I was praying in church. This is like 2, 3, 4 months after we became engaged. And I was thinking about all the things that could go wrong in a marriage, divorce, etc., arguments, and so on. And this female voice, I heard this female voice behind me, and it said, "Don't worry, everything will be fine."
Mm-hmm.
And I looked behind, and there was nobody there. As a matter of fact, there was nobody in church. So
Right.
that was a signal grace that I paid attention to.
Yeah. So it was pushing you towards going to go ask Nanny out, or
yeah.
eventually. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
by all means, yeah.
And I find that fascinating. You said it was love at first sight.
Yeah.
And now for people who aren't aware, you two have been married for 65 years, which
65
is
years,
incredible.
yeah.
Nanny, was it love at first sight for you as well, or did it take a little time?
It took me a few weeks.
Yeah.
Yes. But I continued. He asked me out every night, I think.
Every night?
Yes.
Yeah, persistent.
And I did go. And things certainly grew. And when we got married a year later.
Right. Okay. Yeah. It's pretty quick for today's standards.
I guess so.
What was it that, did something finally click between you and Granddad? Because it took a few weeks, but what was it that happened, you think? Or maybe he impressed you or something?
At that point I was working. I was actually in a lab technician course, and I kind of didn't want to get tied up with a steady boyfriend at the time.
Yeah.
And we were going to these dances in the country and at the cottage, and they were a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I kind of didn't want to. I wasn't really looking for someone to go steady with or go out with.
Right.
But it just happened, and I didn't. I had a little thought in my head that I shouldn't say no. So,
right. Okay. So you kind of had a signal grace as well, you could say, where
a little bit.
There's a message to you that this was the right person.
And it has been great.
Yeah. So that, I think you two would be perfect people to go to if you're looking for relationship advice. Just because it's 65 years is, that's definitely a big achievement. How have you kept things going strong? Because I know a typical problem in relationships is that you get bored or that you stop having fun and things kind of dwindle down. But for you guys, has it been challenging? And you can talk about those challenges, but how have you kept things going for so long?
Well, we had 5 children in about 6.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a very busy time. And then we started our own business. And we had a store in Ottawa, O'Shea's, and we had a store in Calgary and Edmonton too.
Mm-hmm.
And we were busy. All my life I've been busy, I think.
Right.
And I don't think it hurts to be busy.
No, yeah, I think that's good. Like you keep your mind occupied, so you're not.
We were never bored.
No,
never.
Yeah, I think that's key.
I think one of the important things is to have fun together, and when I say have fun, I mean all the time.
Yeah. And
you say, well, that sounds impossible, but that's what one should be striving for in a marriage, is to have fun all the time.
Right. Yeah. What are some things you guys do together to have fun? Because I know you have some things in common. You like martinis, and you guys are both like horseback riding, right? What are some things you have in common?
Well, I think at the end of the day, we usually have a couple of martinis, just to relax and chew about different things that happen through the day. I think that's important. But I think we always try to avoid disagreements and just sort of try to make as much fun out of it as we possibly can, because that's so important. And if you're going to be with somebody 65 years, you might as well have some fun.
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. You definitely want to have a good time for that long. And yeah, you mentioned the disagreements, that you kind of want to keep those to a minimum, right? I'd imagine running a business together, you'd have some conflicts or maybe some decision making, or maybe you guys were you generally on the same page?
I think we were generally on the same page. I mean, I had a great deal of respect for Margaret, and she did it for me as well. And we, if there was some area we were in disagreement about, we try and work it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we had different areas. I was the buyer and the main staff personnel.
Right.
Ron was more in the accounting area.
Okay.
And so we had our areas, I think, great, but we discussed everything, didn't we?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of communication. Nothing was ever hidden.
Well, you mentioned we had 5 kids in 6 years. That is a big challenge.
Right.
You're facing total exhaustion from the kids being up at night, and so that can be a real troublesome time.
Mm-hmm. I've talked to you before about relationships, and you mentioned that it's pretty important to get the first part right, which is the selection process, right? Like you want to make sure you pick.
Yes.
You want to make sure you pick the right person. For maybe
I didn't pick the right person. I was directed to the right person.
Right. Yeah.
Signal grace.
Right. Yeah. It wasn't even up to you. It was a done deal.
The first time I saw her, I said, well, it'd be nice to marry that girl.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. Right off the start. But I was gonna say for maybe if you want to give some advice to a young lad like myself. So, how do I find the right girl, and what is like if there's like a checklist in a sense,
the first
that you
thing is to pray.
To pray, yeah.
Yeah, pray for help.
Right.
Pray for guidance.
I need help. I need help.
And I mean, there's no point in me going and talking about all the different areas we disagreed on, because we always worked our way through them.
Right.
And so I think when you have some prayer behind you, and when you want to make things go right,
mm-hmm.
You'll work at it, and it's
Right.
really not that hard.
Right.
I think the thing is to fall in love and stay in love.
Mm-hmm. Like you dedicate yourself. I know you've talked about commitment, how in your day it wasn't really even an option to back out, right? Is that true?
Well, certainly there were divorces. We got married in 56.
Six.
So there was certainly divorces in 1956,
Mm-hmm.
but we really didn't think about divorce, and
We didn't know anybody who was divorced.
there was no reason for it.
Right.
Have a lot of fun, and you don't have to worry about it.
Right. I think one thing that makes it a little more difficult these days is that you can reach so many more people than maybe when you guys were younger. 'Cause,
Yes.
like I think you've said before that a lot of time you'd end up dating someone who's just they're in your neighborhood, right? They're close by and you know them. But with dating apps these days, you have a much wider reach and maybe a overwhelming amount of potential people that you could date.
Yes, and in our courtship, people really knew around you, and they would know if someone was not a good choice.
Right.
And they'd get back to your mother
Yeah.
right away.
Right.
And so it was much more close community.
Right.
It was a really large family community in a way.
Right. Yeah. You might have more influence. Like your parents may have had a lot of influence on who you were gonna date.
Well, they were pretty free as far as if I wanted to go out with someone, they didn't object.
Right.
But it's just that there was one instance, and this is a funny instance, but Ron used to come at 7 o'clock in the morning and we'd go to Mass together. Mm-hmm. And then we'd go out in the evening or he'd come over. Anyway, one of our neighbors was, she got up and she, or at least she went to bed, she saw Ron's car there. And then when she got up in the morning, the car was there again. So she phoned my mother to say, Ron was here last night and his car is still here this morning. Right. But of course he had gone home.
Yeah.
In the meantime.
So was she concerned a little bit with like why is
she was
Ron's
reporting,
car?
you know, this is a kind of, I'm saying a bigger family community.
Right.
Because my mother was at the cottage. She wasn't home.
Right. Okay.
I'm very thankful that when Mrs. Shea came back, Margaret's mother, and heard the story about the two of us, that she was very much on our side.
Yeah.
Right away.
Right. That's good.
Yeah.
Granddad, did you have to? I know it was more of a tradition that you would have to go to the girl's dad and ask her for approval to marry. Did you have to do something like that? Did you have to go to Nanny's dad?
Not really. Well, I mean, first of all, you meet the father and meet the mother for the first time, so you're concerned about that. But
right.
Nothing specific, you know, because you know they're passing their opinions about what's going on right away.
Yeah, you get a sense if you've got the approval without necessarily asking.
Yeah.
Right. Granted, you mentioned the prayer and how powerful that's been for you, and like I said, I'm not necessarily religious, but I see a lot of benefits to praying, because it's a time where you set everything else aside and you sit down and you're able to have maybe like your mindset is on positivity and hopefulness. Is that fair to say that that's kind of what's going on when you're praying, or is it something additional, or am I missing something there?
Well, like the first time I saw Margaret, I wanted to marry her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a bit unusual.
Yeah.
But that's the way it was. I think we have to be open to these signal graces, what we speak about, and the 15 promises that Mary has given us. You know, for anybody who says the Rosary. So I think not only says the rosary, but go to church on a regular basis, Mass and so on.
Right. Yeah, it's
Does that answer your question?
no, yeah, it does. It does. Praying, it might be something I'll have to start implementing. The thing is,
Do you know the Hail Mary?
I know the football play, Hail Mary, but I don't know the prayer, no.
Well, it's not very long.
Yeah.
If you give me about 2 or 3 minutes, I can tell you about it.
Right.
And the rosary is simply a repetition of the Hail Mary and
Yeah.
the Our Father after 10 Hail Marys. But so it really isn't difficult. And I think that the important thing too is to keep your mind open to the saints and to Mary and Jesus to guide you, and they will.
Right.
And in a very positive way.
What is your take on like for me, I guess I'm looking at religion and I see a lot of positive aspects to it, but I haven't necessarily committed to the full thing. Like I see some beneficial aspects of Christianity and but I also see some from like the Buddhist religion and even in some of the Muslim the aspects of that, just like the discipline and the humility and a lot of the religions. What do you think about that? Do you think I'm missing out on something by not fully taking the whole thing and just kind of picking and choosing?
I think so.
Ahead, yeah.
Well, of course, we are committed to our Catholic faith because we were brought up in that, and we believe that Christ instituted it, and that it has remained true to the faith that He brought forth. And certainly other religions have their appeals, but they would not replace what we have in our minds and hearts as our faith. Right.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And has religion played a big role for you in your relationship and keeping it going for 65 years?
Oh, I think so.
Yeah.
And like any couple, we've had difficulties in different ways, in business, some financial maybe, and raising 5 kids has challenges too. But through it all, we did keep our faith, and it has never failed us.
Right, and I asked you about things in common, and maybe this is one of the biggest things that you have in common that's actually helped to keep you guys going, is that you both had this faith that has been shared, and that,
yes,
I could see being great for the relationship.
And we both like gin.
Yeah, gin is crucial. That's very, very important.
So the element of fun is important too.
Yeah.
Well, there was a tolerance required in any marriage, because your partner has their likes and dislikes, and yours are quite different. Like my biggest hobby was horses, and it wasn't Ron's, but he was very tolerant for my riding and so on, and he liked music and the drums, and I think I was pretty tolerant too.
Right, yeah. With a little bit of gin, maybe the tolerance increases.
Well,
oh, absolutely. Yeah.
At the end of the day, with 5 kids under 6.5, you needed something.
Right, absolutely. I could see that. That's that'd be a big demand. Then you mentioned prayer and going through some difficulties. How it was especially important, the prayer, when you're going through a tough time. And I wanted to ask about a couple of those scenarios. Granddad, in the Granddad stories that you wrote about, you talked about a time when you were at St. Pat's High School and you were dealing with a little bit of depression.
Yes.
And I wanted to talk to you about that, of what was it like, especially being depressed at that era, and how did you overcome that? Because I know there might be some people listening to this where even they might themselves be having a rough time of things. Maybe they're depressed, and I think we could provide them with some good advice here. So
Yeah, well, my dad was in business for himself in two ways. He operated a manufacturing plant that employed about, I'm going to say 80 people.
mm-hmm.
And they were all experienced, so more so than I was. When my father died when I was 21, so I really wasn't ready to take over his position.
Mm-hmm.
I simply, when the people that were there working all had quite a bit of experience. But what do you do? Well, it can become extremely difficult, and I had became depressed or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And but eventually worked my way through it. I think prayer was the one area where I felt that I could get. I was assured of some help, and assured that that I would be listened to, and so these are important things.
Right. So prayer, it allowed you to stay positive even under a difficult scenario.
Well, I was very depressed because as you can imagine, I had many problems that were very difficult for me. And so it wasn't easy. And I think this sort of thing can happen to a lot of people, say when their parent dies and they've been the key factor in the business ever since it started. My father started his business in 1929, which was the year I was born. And I guess he figured he needed more money after I was born, but I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
But anyways, he and his brother started the business, and he only had $50, and that wasn't quite enough. So we borrowed $500 from his sister. So they had $550 to start the business with.
Right.
And then he ended up employing, as I say, about 80 some people, and it was the building that he was operating from. He owned.
Mm-hmm.
That was worth about $600,000, and the business was about $300,000. So.
Yeah, that must have been very overwhelming. A lot of things at once.
Yeah, it would be overwhelming for anybody, really. It takes time.
Right, and yeah, I guess for anybody that, like you said, that could happen to a lot of people, where you just very unfortunate circumstances find you, and
yeah, well, somebody dies that, like my dad, and it was very. He and I were very close as people, and he played the piano and I played the drums, and we practiced every night for about a couple of hours.
mm-hmm.
So, I mean, besides other things in the family and so on, which we enjoyed together. So it was a great loss, and I'm sure it happens in many families. But if you have the strain of an unknown business, you can certainly get depressed.
Right, and to have something like that happen out of nowhere, where obviously you didn't deserve to have that happen, and this type of thing does happen occasionally to people, where something very tragic comes their way, and how do you not get like almost bitter at the world? Like you feel like why did this have to happen to me, and then how do you stay hopeful and positive rather than get bitter and feel like resentful? Like, or you might even be looking up at the gods, you could say, and be angry and say, why did this happen? How do you navigate that scenario?
With difficulty,
Yeah.
And I think anybody who's, because of death, is forced into a difficult situation is bound to take some time in order to get over it. And but you do with more experience and prayer. And I was certainly praying quite hard at that time. And then, of course, after a number of years, 3 or 4 years, I did eventually meet Margaret.
Right, yeah.
I was looking for the right girl, and
she helped to lift your
as
spirits.
I said the first time I saw her, that she would be a great girl to marry. I wasn't wrong.
Right.
Or the signal
not.
grace I had was right.
Right. Yeah, that's a important thing that you mentioned about the time. Just to trust that within time things will eventually get better. Because I think people can get in a scenario like that and they feel like where they're at now is going to be the way it always will be, and that they'll never be able to.
Yeah, I think you have to have faith in prayer.
Right.
And faith in the people you're praying to. If you can get them talking back to you, that helps, you know.
Right.
Like I was in the St. Anne de Beaupré's, and she has a big statue there that everybody prays underneath it, and it's about 20 feet high. And I'd been there a number of times before because my dad was born in Quebec City and then moved to Ottawa, so he was very familiar with the shrine, which is about 30 miles outside of Quebec. And so anyways, I was praying there after a number of years of problems and so on. And she said, I went to get up and after I said my prayers and move away, and she said, I want you to stay.
Yeah.
She said, let the others come and go. I want you to stay.
Right.
You know, in a commanding way, just like that. And I said, okay, I will.
Yeah.
And so that these saints can give you pretty positive direction and meaningful direction.
Right, and you wouldn't dare say no to the messages they're sending over to you, right?
No, never. You'd be too afraid to.
Right. Yeah.
I was, Mother Teresa. She was quite a person when she was here, and she helped out millions of people through the world and so on. And I just said, oh, well, I'd like to have some of the qualities that she had. And I sort of laughed when I said it, that I would eventually have some of the good things about her that she had. And anyways, I was over in France with Margaret in southern France on a holiday. And we went into this little church, and I was unsure as to whether it was a Catholic church. It did turn out to be a Catholic church. And they were saying the Mass was just beginning. So I thought, well, this would be a good time to go in. And there was somebody singing there, and they were off-key. And I was about to pass a derogatory comment about that.
Right.
Or something that I thought was funny.
And
then I heard this voice saying, I don't want you to say that.
Yeah.
And that was Mother Teresa. She had a very raspy voice. I don't want you to say that.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't.
No. Yeah, you listen to that. I think, it seems like people in general, they'll have messages, whether it's, I'm not sure if it's exactly the same messages that you would received, that you just described, but messages of some sorts, whether it's a thought that appears in their mind and directs them towards something.
Yes.
Because I've definitely had moments like that where you get an idea and it's almost like one of those aha moments, and you know this is what I should go do. But I personally haven't been able to attribute it to someone like Mother Teresa or another saint. Nanny, have you had a similar experiences with signal graces or messages?
Yes, but I think very often, let's say our parents have died and they're in heaven, and I think they direct us.
Right.
I think they are watching over us and want us to make the right choice. And I feel that. Not so much saints, but relatives,
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think these messages that you do receive, like you're saying, Granddad, you should say yes to them, and maybe for you there's no option of saying no, right? But
Well, sometimes you need to say no.
oh yeah.
Yeah, it could be that they say no, don't do that.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Or not a good choice.
Right.
No,
Yeah,
I think that's just as true for no as for yes.
right. Do you find that a lot of the messages that you might receive from your parents, or for you, Granddad, from some of the saints, that they are messages pushing you past a fear or maybe an anxiety? Because I find the messages that seem to they appear mysteriously, like the things you're describing as well, where they're guiding you towards a specific action. A lot of the time for me, it's pushing me past this a fear. I might be afraid to go, whatever it is, really, and the message is saying, go, you should do that, even though there's also aspects of yourself that's holding you back. There's fears that are telling you, no, don't do that. But is that do you share that experience where it's pushing you past the fear a lot of the time?
Well, you mentioned about them talking quietly to you. I think the saints can do that, but I think it's more impactful if they're angry or if they're positive, or
Right.
like you can't pass them up.
No. Yeah.
Hey boy, you better listen to me.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I've heard you describe it as a lightning bolt. Right. It's very
Lightning
powerful.
bolt.
It just hits you.
Very powerful. Yeah. It's like somebody shouting at you.
Right.
It's.
Yeah. It's. I don't know if this is fair to say, but it almost, to me, it seems like it's like your conscience is guiding you in certain ways, and you say no at your own risk, right? Like you say no to what your conscience is telling you is the right thing to do, and you're gonna pay a price.
It wasn't my conscience; it was Saint Anne,
right,
or Mother Teresa, or the Blessed Virgin.
Right.
And when they tell you something, you listen.
Right. Yeah. No, they're
and you don't
powerful.
question. You do it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good mindset to go in when you feel messages like that. You go do it, and there's no hesitation, no overthinking, and you just you go towards the action.
Yeah, I think it would be good for anybody to read the 15 Promises of Mary, for anybody who says the Rosary, because gosh, it's there to help everybody, no matter what they're doing. And so I'd certainly recommend that. Signal Graces is the first one of the 15, and certainly has been impactful for me.
Right. Granted, one of the signal graces that you mentioned, or actually it was kind of a theme throughout the whole binder, was that these saints were encouraging you to be kind and sensitive and gentle. I was just wondering what your take on that is, and how you've struggled, or if there's been any struggle. Because for me, sometimes if someone's encouraging me to be very gentle and sensitive, I'm a little concerned that maybe people will see the kindness as weakness, which is a common misconception, is that people will think, oh, you're really gentle and sensitive, and that's weak, and we could, like, maybe people might look at that as they could take advantage of that.
Yes.
Or how do you see that, Nanny and Grandad?
If you think of how St. Anne spoke to me, I mean, it was very positive. She said, "I want you to stay."
Mm-hmm.
She didn't ask me if I could stay.
Right.
She said, "I want you to stay."
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You're gonna stay. Yeah.
And Mother Teresa, she was always commanding,
Right.
and she says, "I don't want you to say that."
Yeah.
I don't want you to say that. Well, I didn't.
Right.
But I wondered what the heck is going on, But basically, she didn't want me to say unkind things about particularly someone I didn't know,
Right.
Because if they ever got word of it, they'd feel badly about it. And there's enough of that floating around in the world.
Right. Did you ever have difficulty trying to be kind because some people might take advantage, or do you think there's a difference? You can be kind, but you can also stand up for yourself, and was that ever a challenge? No.
It wasn't a question of just being kind.
Yeah.
I had to listen.
Right.
Shut my mouth.
Right.
And shut my mind and listen, and
Mm-hmm.
take encouragement from, and from, say, what St. Anne was saying, what Mother Teresa was saying, what the Blessed Virgin was indicating, which was, and this was the guarantee about getting married to Margaret.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "Oh, don't worry, everything will be fine."
Right.
Well, you can also
And here we are, married 65
be
years.
positive, and if you want to move them towards a different direction, let's say they said something about someone that was unkind. Well, sometimes you can say, "Oh, but she is very good to her family or her mother," or something like that,
Right.
So you are trying to balance the unkind remark.
Right. Yeah. You want to soften it a little bit. Like, you still want to be honest, right? But you might.
Well, yes, but sometimes I think you can be too honest.
Right.
You
Yeah.
need to be a diplomat also.
Right. Yeah, I could see that. Sometimes.
But if any of these saints speak to you, I mean, it's a pretty positive message.
Mm-hmm. And how do we get people to be more interested in religion or praying? Because I know, Granddad, you said that in order for people to have these very powerful experiences of the signal graces, the key step is to pray, right? To pray.
Yeah.
and use the rosary.
Mm-hmm.
For people that have never done that before and they're not necessarily practicing in a religion, do you think there's an alternate solution they could do, like something similar to that?
Saying the rosary is not difficult.
Right.
It's
Well,
easy.
It's online.
Everything's
online.
She was,
Like a follow along video?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
but there really is hardly anything to learn. I mean,
Yeah.
the Hail Mary has got about 6 or 7 lines in it, and
Yeah.
we should be able to learn that.
Right.
And the Our Father, and get a pair of beads. It's not hard to just follow along.
No.
I have a prayer per bead, so you're not going to get lost.
Right. I guess the first step is the most difficult, of just sitting down and beginning. What do you think of the comparison between maybe sitting down and taking some time to meditate versus sitting down to pray the rosary? Do you think there's some similarities there, or it's not really equivalent?
Well, in the rosary, you are meditating.
Right.
Because each mystery has the story behind it,
Right. Okay.
So in the Passion of Christ, and the sorrowful mysteries, and the joyful mysteries, and the glorious mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not hard. And as I said, online, you will get background on that, and you will get some fairly well-known people leading the rosary.
Mm-hmm.
And you could start that way. Or somebody said online, I was reading this, they said, "How can I start to pray?" And the person they were asking said, "When you get up in the morning, just say, 'Good morning, God.'"
Right. Yeah.
That was a small step, but
Yeah, that's a good step because I feel like that would put you on start the morning off positive, right? Like
yes. And then it
yeah.
could lead to other things, but simple is often the best.
Right. Yeah, just a simple, you don't need to be praying all day long. It's just
No.
a quick thing, 10 minutes or so, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. Okay. I wanted to ask both of you about how your perspectives and outlook on life has changed throughout the years. Like I'll leave it fairly open ended on what, but like I know some people as they get older, maybe they value money less, for example, or maybe they value family more. Maybe they value whatever it is. Like their values will change, and I'm kind of curious how your values have changed throughout time, or if they've stayed pretty consistent.
Well, if I could just say a word about money.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, we all need money, and no matter what our age is.
Right.
And the longer, if we have a bunch of kids, we have a lot of expenses there.
Right.
And so you need money. And what else do we do? Well, like in terms of praying, like the Hail Mary is such a simple prayer to say that it's an awfully easy way to pray.
Right. And were you always very spiritual? Like when you were a young man or a boy, like were you did you always have a spiritual side, or was that something you kind of developed over time?
I think I always had a spiritual side, but I think like all people, I think you go through periods that are good and periods that are bad.
Yeah.
And I certainly did that, but I tried to lean more towards the good part than the bad part.
Right. Yeah, and Nanny, for you, were you always spiritual, and have your values kind of been changed as time's gone on?
Well, I think you do broaden your values. I think family maybe becomes more important as you have your own family and friends. Also, you value them more. That's what I would say is that the values change slightly, but I don't think for me that they change that much.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I think when you realize that, as Mary said, I said, Mary promises 15 different things for people who say the rosary. And my goodness, a lot of very good promises in there.
Yeah, I saw those.
I asked you to think about them.
Yeah, you asked me, and I would like to have all 15 if I could. They're great. They're good
I don't
promises.
blame you.
Yeah, no, they're good. But we'll see.
I mean, they're all there for everybody, and I think that's the way to go. And when you pass through a period of maybe great problems, and you've worked your way through it, and prayer has probably helped you achieve whatever you wanted to achieve. You kind of rely on that, and it's nice to think that type of help is there.
Right. We brought up money for a little bit. I was wondering if that has that, your opinion on money, changed over time? Like, do you value it less or more, or it's still
Did you ever run out of money?
Yeah, I mean,
well, it's even worse if you're married.
Right.
Have
yeah,
a family.
It's a big.
You got to fill the holes pretty quick.
Yeah, no,
in some way or other.
Yeah, it's inevitable. You can't really get around it. But I guess I was just thinking it's one of those things you can't necessarily. Yeah, I mean, it solves some problems, but not all.
No.
And it can cause a lot of disagreements, because I bring this up just because I remember in the granddad stories you mentioned there was sometimes money would be a topic of disagreement, I guess. And do you think people, how do you navigate like money challenges like that? And I'll leave it there.
Well, I don't think money was ever a huge problem for us, Ron. I mean, we didn't want to be wealthy. We just
No?
wanted to have enough,
Right. Okay.
and of course, you want your business to do well, and you have a family to support and so on. But no, I don't think it was a key thing for us.
Right. Right.
I mean, we were fortunate in that we never went hungry.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Your
And,
business was successful, and
Yes,
you were always
and
in a good spot.
and that was the point that I would mention, because Ron had sold his business. He didn't have a job. We were in Ottawa, and we took the kids, 5 kids, over to Ireland for a long trip, about 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and we stayed in B&Bs with them.
Yeah.
And on the way home, I was in Shannon, and I grabbed a top that I liked
Right.
and bought it. And when I got home, every time I wore that top, strangers would come up to me and ask me where I bought it.
Yeah.
And so I said to Ron, I think we should open an Irish store. And he said, well, he didn't think much of it.
Yeah.
Well, I said, let's go around and look at some of the Irish stores that are around here. We did, and then we went further afield, like out around Toronto and so on.
Uh-huh.
And no matter what we saw, it didn't turn. They didn't look very, very prosperous. I said people are doing this to have some fun or something,
Right.
but they really weren't in it to make money. But as it turned out, we were the largest store
Or business.
business in dealing in the Irish merchandise in North America. That's the U.S. and Canada, and we
Right.
were number one.
Oh wow. Number one.
So we were,
And the others,
we enjoyed it immensely, and we were quite successful at it, and had a lot of fun, and that's so important. You gotta have some fun.
Yeah. Just both of you were like
We're both.
entrepreneurs, and you wanted you enjoyed the whole business and trying to
I was
develop it.
definitely an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I think Ron was a combination.
Oh yeah. Combination of
Well, business and entrepreneurship.
right. Okay.
Margaret was a great help.
Yeah. No,
I was what?
A great help.
Yeah, no, that's really amazing that you were, I mean, been able to stay married for 65 years, run a business together, have all, all the kids, grandchildren. I don't even know how many grandchildren it's up to now.
17 plus more step-grandchildren.
Right.
And then we have, I think, 10 great-grandchildren.
Wow.
So we're somewhere in the area of 30,
Right. Yeah.
plus the 5 we had, so that's 35.
That's impressive. Yeah, I think we could leave it at that, unless there's some additional things you want to bring up. But I think that was good. There's some good relationship advice there. Some good notes on dealing with difficult times, and
I just, one other thing. I mean, there's so much talk these days about religion being a waste of time, and I'm not going to go to church anymore because of the problems that are there and so on. And I think personally, if you think of the 15 promises that Mary gives to all of us who say a few prayers, keep that in mind. And because, gosh, we need help. We need help. And encouragement. And we need a spiritual friend. We need all kinds of friends, but we need spiritual friends too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's...
Well, I remember, and I'm not sure if this is Shakespeare or who has said it, but into each life some rain must fall.
Right.
And I think that's true of everybody's life.
Right.
There'll be some tough times or some trying times. and you need all the help you can get.
Right. And the rain is beneficial. A friend of mine told me this quote one time about no, if you have no rain, you have no flowers, right?
No.
So I think these tough times often they
Yes.
shape who you are.
Yes.
Hopefully for the better. Sometimes they can be overwhelmingly difficult, but oftentimes they actually end up developing your strength. Is that fair to say, you think?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I think very much so.
Mm-hmm.
If life was just like a candy shop,
No,
You
it
wouldn't
be
grow.
interesting. No.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes you can have problems that are certainly overwhelming, and these aren't so nice.
Right.
So, yeah, spiritual friend would be helpful.
Yeah, I think it would definitely be helpful, especially these days, in interesting times, especially with COVID and
Oh, yes.
and a lot of tough things going on. People
Yes.
having trouble with work and trouble staying locked inside all the time. So, yeah, hopefully this has been good for if anybody's going through times like that. And I think that's a great recommendation, Granddad, of try to develop your spiritual side, right? And try to find a spiritual friend, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that's been good. We'll wrap it up here. And
Thank you.
yeah, thanks Nanny and Granddad for coming on the podcast.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome. Thank you.
All right, take care.